5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Ready or not, here Lent comes. Folks, Ash Wednesday is just a few days away, and if you're anything like me, you probably haven't thought about it much at all. So what we're going to talk about today on Ignition is how can I, even these last few days, prepare for Lent? Why should I prepare for Lent? How can I prepare for Lent, and what difference does it make? That's what we're going to be talking about today on the show. Welcome to Ignition. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into today's topic, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is ignition at sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition at sfcatholic.org. I'm joined in the studio by my guest today, Robyn Bruggeman. Did you think I was going to give out your personal email address there?
I wasn't too worried about it.
Oh, you weren't worried about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Robyn, would you, we were preparing last week talking about this, and I alluded to when you've been on the show before, and I've never been on Ignition before, but yes, you have.
It feels like it, but I haven't.
You never have. I was sure you had been, but
it's because you've invited me.
Okay.
You've graciously invited me, and I have
graciously
declined until now.
Until now. So, because this is your first time on the show, would you want to just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Yeah. So I am Robyn Bruggeman. I am married to Spike, and we've been married for 28 years. 28 years. Awesome years. And we live on a farm right on the South Dakota-Iowa border. He farms and has an auto repair shop. We have 7 great kiddos. Our youngest is 8. Our oldest is 24. Let's see. So 7 kiddos. I have 1 grandbaby. Mm-hmm. I have 1 son-in-law. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
And you have to be son-in-law, to be daughter. You have 2 engaged kids.
Yeah, I have 2 engaged kiddos too. So I have kind of an interesting span of ages of kiddos because I have, 8-year-olds,
right,
middles, junior high, high school, college, and adult kids. So
and your granddaughter's how old?
1.5 years.
So you've got an 8-year-old child and a 1.5-year-old grandbaby.
Yeah, which is so fun because it's so fun watching my little fellows be an uncle. It's just the sweetest thing ever. So yeah, that's our life. I'm a convert to the Catholic faith. I converted, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago or so. And I'm still learning.
That's right. It was after you got married.
Yes, I was married for a few years and not a likely person to convert. And I know you're still waiting for my full conversion story.
One day.
Someday I'll give that to you.
You'll graciously accept.
Yes. But I am happily Catholic now, and it's been the best decision along with marrying Spike. It's been the best decision ever. And I love our faith. I love getting to know it. I love getting to celebrate it. And yeah.
And one of the, as you and I, our listeners, viewers wouldn't know, but one of the things that you and I talk about a lot, and something that you're really passionate about, is living out in a family context. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you talked about your family for that reason. In addition to because they're just a great family. They're
pretty cool.
But also because you love the connection between our faith, especially the liturgical expression of our faith, the liturgical life of the church, and what that looks like in a home family setting context.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about preparing for Lent, but I'm just curious, why is this such a compelling thing to not Lent, but of how we can bring the liturgical life of the church? We jokingly call it living lit, which means something else these days entirely for many people.
And did when you and I were
that's probably
growing
true,
up too. But my family has coined it living lit. That's kind of my deal. I should have like a little R at the end with a circle, right?
Right. Because I'm sure nobody ever said that before at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, patent it with my living lit way.
Right.
To us, living lit is having a good time.
Yes.
A good, healthy, good time.
Healthy, good time. So why is living liturgically such a passion for Robyn Bruggeman?
I was thinking about that on the way home or on the way here because I thought you might ask me that. I don't know. I think it's because I knew nothing about the Catholic Church before becoming Catholic. Mm-hmm. What I did know was not right. I was misinformed.
Yes.
And so I think it's by getting to learn more about our faith, and the church year itself, I just am so intrigued by that. And I learned so much, from the different feast days, especially from different saints that have gone before us and, lived great lives of our faith, even in the history aspect of it. And I don't know. And it's just, there's something that comes so alive when you're living the church life in the home. And I don't know. I just love it. It just really, it's an extension of church to home.
Right.
So
I know there's a fun Latin phrase, the Domus Ecclesiae. Do you know what Domus Ecclesiae means, Robyn Bruggeman?
is it domestic church?
Ding, ding, ding. See, I need the buzzer, Bill.
Yeah,
Domestic church. So,
Yes.
Of course, the church is not, it's not primarily the building where we go to
Right.
celebrate Mass and so on.
Yeah.
The church is primarily the family of God, the community of disciples of his son, Jesus Christ, the temple of the Holy Spirit. So, we see it alive at Mass in the church building, but we can also see it alive around the kitchen table or the bedside before at nighttime or the living room at night for family prayers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it just changes the whole focus, I think, away from living in the world, but not becoming of it. I think, when we are focused more on what's going on in the church today or this week or this season, it just draws us back to Christ more. Because really living liturgical it always leads back to Christ.
Yep.
Always leads back to Christ in the church. So it's just a great, it's like a dance.
Yeah.
It's kind of going back and forth
Yeah.
and just keeping it going when you're at Mass and you're at home.
Who's
and you're at
leading,
Mass.
Robyn?
Who's leading? In our home?
The groom leads, and that's Jesus.
Yes. Okay. You almost got me there. Yes. Jesus always, everything back to Jesus. Always.
Always back to Jesus.
Liturgical living, that's what it's all about.
So what are some things, so we're not talking about Lent yet, so just an example or two of how the Bruggeman family has lived liturgically, some of the fun things that you guys have done.
Okay.
Outside of Lent, because I don't want to talk about the Triduum thing.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So here's the fresh one, right? So yesterday was St. Polycarp.
Yeah.
Okay. So the natural thing would be to have fish, right?
Sure.
Right? Okay, so you don't think that? You don't think
What?
carp? Oh my gosh, I got you, Bergwald. I love it. Okay.
Did you have mini carp? Because
here's this is how funny we are. Okay, so Spike is the punniest of all, right? So he plays the liturgical living game with me. It just, it's so great. So I was barely home yesterday or last night, but I'm like, okay, it's Polycarp. We're going to do fish for supper and just talk quick. Who is Polycarp? Whatever. We're just going to celebrate him today or honor him, right? On one of my trips into Sioux Falls yesterday, stopped by Aldi, grabbed fish sticks, and said to the kid I had with me, okay, it's St. Polycarp Day. I'm not even home. I'm going to drop you off, come back into town, whatever, but you guys are going to have fish sticks, and this is why. So we got home fairly late, and one of the girls started the fish sticks, and then Spike came through, and he knew we were going to have fish. But he's like, fish sticks? And I'm like, yeah, remember, I'm like yelling from the bedroom. I'm like, remember, it's St. Polycarp Day. And he's like, oh, that's right, plastic fish. And I'm like, what? He goes, poly means plastic, carp fish, and we're having like fish sticks. Like fish sticks are fine and great, but sometimes they're just plasticky.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. We are having plastic fish
Polycarp.
for Polycarp. So that's what we did yesterday.
Nice. Okay, that's good. Not very fresh, actually, because
yesterday. What?
Polycarp. It was frozen. Was it fresh?
Oh, true.
Yeah.
True.
One more
Plastic
example
fresh.
outside of Lent. Bruggeman's living liturgically.
Oh, I mean, we do it all the time. I'm wearing green today.
Way to brag.
I'm at ordinary time. I'm wearing green. No, we don't do it perfectly. I'm not bragging. We do not live liturgically perfectly. But I would say the most
do you do anything for Pentecost?
Well, of course, we wear red to church and have red. I usually make some sort of.
Red velvet cake.
You could totally do that. I usually take fruit roll-ups, and the kids help me cut them in flames, and we put them on a cupcake. But yeah, we do.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But red velvet, anything red, but wear red to Mass. But living liturgically, really, I think the one of the most important things we can do to live liturgically, and anybody can do this, single, married, young, old, is to read the daily readings if you're not going to Mass. And that's something Spike and I do every single day together. We start our morning with the daily readings, Mass readings.
You know what? I'm going to have you back some time because I just realized we're not going to take a lot of time to talk about what does it. I sort of said, all right, living liturgically means this integration between the liturgical life of the church and our family life. But what does that look like? So that's a great example of the readings of the day. But I know there's a lot more that we could say about that.
There's so many things that you don't have to have a family at home or living within the family.
Right. Right. So what we're not going to do it now, unless you have an easy answer to this, then we can just briefly touch on it. But I could just take the Bible, and a lot of people, Bible in a Year with Father Mike Schmitz, or people do go, and that's not quite cover to cover, almost, but not quite. Yep. Other people do cover to cover, but you're proposing actually to do the Mass readings every day.
Yeah.
So we could talk about maybe another time why we would do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So we get the whole Bible within.
Actually.
Not quite. Not the whole, but most of it within the 3-year cycle.
Yes, we do. And especially if you're doing daily readings, 2 years.
Yes. Yeah. Daily readings.
More Absolutely. Next time.
Yes, to be continued.
But today, Lent's coming really, really quickly. So we're recording the Thursday before. Yep. Folks, you're hearing this 2-3 days before. And oftentimes, what?
Thankfully, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. Well, oftentimes it has happened to me. I mean, not as much lately. I mean, the day job sort of helps me remember Lent's coming. But there have definitely been times in my life where all of a sudden, even working for the church, Ash Wednesday arrives and I'm like, oh my gosh,
sneak up.
What am I? Yeah, and usually it's around giving up, right? What's the penance that I'm, or what mortifications am I going to take on? Yeah. So it can sneak up on us.
Have you seen? Okay, there's this meme. I have to tell you real quick. This meme, either you or Bill seen it. It's a mirror, like your side mirror in your car. And you know how on the bottom it says objects in mirror are closer than they appear?
Yeah.
And then the picture on that, it says Lent.
Nice.
Lent is
but
closer.
Totally.
Yeah, it's
there
total
been many times
what's
where all of
going
a
on
sudden,
now.
boom.
It's like it's closer
Mardi
than
Gras.
we thought.
It's tomorrow. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And I've thought about it maybe a little bit, but I haven't actually decided. Yeah. And sometimes I'm into Lent. I'm like, I want to do.
It just comes so fast. I think we think about it when like prematurely. You're like way before Lent starts. You'll be like, oh, when Lent starts, I'm totally going to do X, Y, Z.
Absolutely.
And you're like, I almost wish Lent was next week because this is what I would do. And then it comes and it's like, oh, shoot, I was totally going to prepare a little bit better for what I was going to do.
Right. So how do we prepare for Lent? So if folks are like you and I have been in the past and it's Sunday, Monday, leading up to Ash Wednesday, or maybe they're listening to this on the podcast and actually it's already come and gone, but they haven't thought of so whether it's right before or maybe early on into Lent and I have not thought about it at all, what should I do to prepare or to sort of actually get into the mode?
I think that the best thing, regardless of if you have taken the time, like you're hearing this and you still have a couple days or a day before Ash Wednesday, or like you say, maybe you're already into Lent. Either way, the best thing you can do is to just, I think personally, just stop and ask God, what do you want from me this Lent? Because I think we can all get caught up in the, like, I know what I'm going to do for Lent this year. Like, I know what I'm going to give up. I know what I'm going to take on. But how often do we, and maybe everybody does this but me, but I can tend to forget to stop and say, okay, God, what do you think I should give up? What do you think I should take on? Like, what ways do you want me to grow closer to you? And so regardless of, it's definitely, I think, a little bit better if we do that a little bit before Lent starts, but not to beat yourself up if you haven't. Don't worry. Because, God knows right where you're at. He loves you where you're at, and he accepts where you're at. So wherever you're at, to just stop and be like, okay, God, what do you want from me this Lent? What can I do to love you more? So I don't know. That's kind of what I come down to. And I don't yet have my own answers for that. I'm still praying on that. But yeah, even if Lent has started. And I think too, to keep that at the front of our mind, we can start Lent and think that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z this Lent. And maybe that works great for all of Lent. But maybe it isn't a good fit. Kind of like the year I tried to give up pop years ago, and my family had to be like, not only is that hell for you, it's hell for all of us. It's time to start drinking pop again. Or you need to reevaluate. Or maybe you've gotten into Lent and you've fallen, and don't give up. Just go back and be like, hey, God, what do you want from me?
Right.
How can I love you more? Because to me, that's what I'm trying to make Lent more of, and is more of I heard recently it's a Lent of love. So having it be centered around, how can I love you more, God? What do you want me to do? What's in the way between us that I need to purge out or give up for Lent? And, what can I add to my life to bring me closer to you? And who do you want me to bless this Lent in almsgiving? So I think if we can just reroute it back wherever we're at, I don't know. That's my thought.
So I wanted to, we're going to explore a few of those things. So for instance, I know some people listening and they hear your proposal of asking God and okay, that makes sense. But some people are going to be like, okay, but yeah, I hear people say that, but how do you do that? Because God doesn't talk to me. Like I don't hear voices. So I'm talking about that. I really love what you're just saying there about, it's giving something up, but then it's also sort of filling the space, whether that's time or some sort of space in our lives that creates. So how we fill that space, not only in relationship with God, but with neighbor as well. So those are some of the things that I want to explore. But folks, if you're just tuning in, you are listening to Ignition. Welcome to the show. Talking today with Robyn Bruggeman about preparing for Lent. Even if you're watching or listening and it's into Lent, this is just having a great conversation about how we can enter into the season of Lent. So, Robyn, with that first question, when you say, maybe ask, actually, so you said, let's ask God what you want us to do. So I do want to know how do you exactly do it? But say more about why. Well, but I've got really good ideas about what I should do this sounds like really bad, but why do you emphasize asking God when I've got some good ideas? Even me putting it that way sounds silly, but.
I think it's, and I just heard this, that Lent is really supposed to be about, and correct me if I'm not the doctor. I'm not the doctor. You are. So correct me if I'm wrong. But it's really to pay more attention to God than ourselves, right? So, and so hard to do. I mean, none of us are perfect. That is a hard thing to do. Even when we don't set out to think of ourselves, there's just so many things we do that really that's what it comes down to. What makes us comfortable? What are we comfortable with? What do I need? What do I want? So I think it's a shifting of not self.
Instead of
yes.
The universe does not revolve around me. But even as adults, as mature adults, we can often fall into that. Yeah. So for us to turn to the Lord, because the other thing too, He knows what's best for us.
He does.
Like I might have a good idea, but you know what? God's got the best idea. Yeah. And hopefully they align. And my idea is actually His idea first. Yeah. But to turn to Him. Yeah. Okay. So, and then practically, concretely, what does it look like when you talk about asking God, what should I do for Lent this year?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm still trying.
You're
I'm still learning.
Though.
I'm practicing. Yeah. I think it's, for starters, praying about it and just having that conversation with God, just approaching it that way, maybe like, okay, Lord, can you show me what you want me to give up or what you want me to add in, or show me how you want me to get closer to you this Lent. And I think that something, when you're just in that relationship with the Lord, all it takes, I think, is just sitting back and waiting for Him to show you. And so it's going to take a little bit of intentionality to try and be open. We have to be open to what He will show you. And I think you just have that peace, or I think you just kind of know, like, if it's this or that. I don't know. I'm still learning, but I feel more of a peace. And just what can I do, Lord, to get to know you better, to see you better, to love you more.
Amen.
And you don't need lots of resources. That's the other thing is I've made the mistake not that it's a mistake, because each of us are called to our own journey during Lent. But there have been years where I've used a lot of resources, and that's probably what I needed that Lent. Yeah. This Lent, I'm kind of like what I think I have? I mean, I've got a ton of books. I have a ton of resources, but I'm feeling to go simple. Like we don't need a lot of stuff to get closer to the Lord.
Amen.
Not that some people may. And like I said, there's seasons in my life where I have, and they're great. We have so many great resources available, but that all of our Lents will look different. So this year I'm feeling like going simple.
Simpler. I do think when the idea of, Lord, what do you want me to do? And then, okay, what am I I'm not going to hear voices. I'm not going to see visions. There is the reality that there's sort of a spiritual hearing or spiritual seeing, just as we can literally physically see, hear, smell, taste, touch things. Our physical senses, there's an analog with our spirit as well, the sort of spiritual senses. And it does take time to learn how to hear spiritually. So I know for me, like just praying in general, let alone this sort of thing, Lord, what do you want me to give up? It does take practice. It does, and it's going to take time. And the Lord, be patient with yourself. The Lord is very patient with us. Be patient with yourself, though. But ask, I think also, just to be honest, that's another thing. Okay, Lord, I don't really know.
Yeah. Tell him, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I don't know how to hear you. I don't know how am I supposed to know it's you telling me. Tell him that. Father
Scott Traynor, my boss, Vicar for Lay and Clergy Formation, talks a lot about how what he heard, the way it was explained to him by somebody when he was first really learning how to actually pray in a relational way when he was in college, was talk to God as if you were a trusted friend. Or talk to God the way you would talk to a friend. So if you're talking to somebody and it's a little bit awkward, or you just say it. You just like, I don't really know how to do this. And, So, okay. So that's how you can do it. But in terms of what you're doing, I loved sort of how it wasn't just giving something up, period, for its own sake. It's also, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying about why we would ask God to begin with. It's about recentering our lives on the Lord. So I give something else. So the reason that I give things up, the reason I practice fasting maybe, is because it helps me order my life, my desires, my quote unquote appetites, my wants, to order them more properly. By like, who's in charge here? My desires or me? Like my mind, my will, and giving something. But it's not just about giving things up. It's about creating that space so I can grow in relationship with God. Talk more about that.
Well, that just reminded me of something else I heard lately about Lent that I just found so amazing. And that Lent, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this, that Lent should build upon each other or build into our spiritual life. And that was just such a cool thing to hear, because it made me think of how, okay, we can give up, pop, coffee, whatever, candy, chocolate, all of them. If that's what you're called to, that's great. And I look back on the Lent that, let's say I've done that. Let's just say that the only thing I've done is decided I'm not going to have candy or eat between, sweets, whatever. You get to Easter, and if you've made it all of Lent successfully, you're like, yes. Maybe you made it halfway and you're like, oh, okay, I made it. It wasn't exactly what I thought. But either way, you're like, yes, I get to eat whatever. You know what I mean? So, or whatever, you get to indulge in whatever you gave up. And then that goes on through Easter season when you're feasting on whatever you maybe gave up, if you gave up something consumable. But if we give up, let's say, a bad habit or something sinful that we tend to fall into, if we give that up and or take something on, we're like building this spiritual life foundation that we can keep building on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that is so beautiful, because then we get to Easter and we're still like, oh my goodness, this is great. I gave up whatever. I feel so much better. And I've added this new foundation or deepen my relationship with Christ, that I'm at a better place than I was.
Right.
And I don't have to stop doing that stuff, and I can keep building on. And if I can keep doing that, then when the next Lent rolls around, I can go a little bit deeper. So I just heard that lately, and that was so beautiful. So beautiful. It just gives you a different lens to look at Lent.
So how does it see? So what is it? Talk about the different lens, like as opposed to what?
I'm just looking at like how I maybe practiced Lent before, and not that it was bad or wrong. And I'm not saying that. I think we're all different things will speak to each of us to where we will go, oh my goodness. And okay, so that is how I felt the Lord talking to me when I was like, Lord, what do you want of me? And it was hearing that. It was hearing a talk that someone gave on that I listened to a couple nights ago, and just went, wow,
Right.
okay, I don't need to maybe give up this certain food or something. I mean, that's all fine and whatever. But for me, I felt God saying, okay, I need you to just deepen your relationship with me. And maybe let's just focus on maybe some root sins or different bad habits I have that I would be better losing for the long haul.
Right.
Giving it up I'm not perfect, but trying and just building. So that was just the way that I personally felt like God stepped in and went, and then just planted those seeds. So it's not like you're like, God is saying, Robyn, do this or whatever. It was just oh, wow, that is beautiful and powerful. That's what I want. That's what I want my Lent to look like.
So with the growth that we experience during Lent, so ideally, of course, we're going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to undo that
Right.
as soon as Lent is over.
Yeah.
So now that doesn't mean that you necessarily continue. It could be like scaffolding, right? So you put the scaffolding up to get a certain point. Well, then you can take the scaffolding, or it could be like training wheels. You use them.
Wheels.
You use them for a time, and then okay, I don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe the thing that I give up or do differently for Lent, I don't have to continue doing that once Easter comes. But there should still be the mentality that I'm doing this to draw closer. So I'm doing this to draw closer to the Lord. And when Lent's over, I don't want to go back to where I was before.
Right.
I want to continue to draw even closer. I want to build on your idea. I want to build on what I've experienced this Lent and continue to draw closer to Him, to go higher, to build higher, even if maybe the specific practices that I do will shift. Would that be a fair?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. And you can do that by simply giving up something.
Yep.
Like whatever it is you are going to give up. I think it's how you're using that, what you're getting from what you're giving up.
Yes.
If you're using that and channeling it the proper way, you'll have the same outcome.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the reason? So I think this is great. Just as we're half a minute left, as I'm going into Lent this year, don't view it as a sort of a one and done. This is like a stepping stone.
Yes.
I want to draw closer to wherever I'm at with the Lord now. I want to draw closer, and then when Easter comes, I want to continue to draw closer.
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes, I love it.
Do you have any words of wisdom in 5 seconds, Robyn?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of on the spot.
Rob, this has been great. Thanks so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
Folks, that will wrap up this episode of Ignition. Again, you can email us, ignition@sfcatholic.org, with any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes. Until next time, may God bless you.